It's September 27, 1968, at 9:45 p.m. in Benicia, California, a small coastal town just north of Vallejo. In a shocking turn of events, a 16-year-old high school student named David Faraday is ambushed while on a date. His date's 17-year-old Betty Lou Jensen is killed instantly. The couple had been parked on a remote section of Vallejo's Lake Herman Road, a secluded spot perfect for a romantic evening. Suddenly, a car pulled up behind them, and a single shot rang out, shattering the peaceful evening. The sound of screeching tires and the crash of a bullet piercing flesh will forever be etched in the memories of those who witnessed that fateful night. The scene unfolds like a horror movie, with David Faraday, left critically injured, slumped over the steering wheel of his car. Betty Lou Jensen's lifeless body lies on the pavement just a few feet away, a pool of blood slowly spreading as the warm California night air carries the acrid smell of gunpowder. In the background, the eerie glow of streetlights casts an otherworldly ambience, while the sound of passing cars echoes through the night, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding before us. The only sound that breaks the silence is the steady beeping of emergency sirens growing louder in the distance. In this moment, the lives of two innocent teenagers are forever changed. The perpetrator, however, remains a mystery. He's a master of deception, able to hide in plain sight, a chameleon of chaos, blending in seamlessly with the crowds. His face is obscured by a hood or a mask, depending on the account, and his identity remains unknown to this day. He's a ghost in the night, striking fear into the hearts of those who dwell in the shadows. His presence sends a ripple effect, leaving behind a trail of terror that will haunt the residents of Northern California for years to come. Eyewitnesses reported hearing the sound of a car pulling up quickly behind the Faraday's vehicle, followed by the sound of a shot and screeching tires. They also claimed to have seen a figure fleeing the scene on foot, wearing a dark raincoat or jacket, their face obscured by a hood or mask. Some accounts suggest the shooter might have been driving a light-colored sedan, while others remember a blue vehicle speeding away from the scene. The details are sketchy, but one thing is certain: this was no ordinary crime. The residents of Benicia are left with more questions than answers, and the hunt for the killer is on. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story, a tale of terror and deception that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The Zodiac Killer, as he would come to be known, was a serial killer who terrorized the residents of Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. His true identity remains a mystery to this day, but his crimes will go down in history as some of the most heinous and baffling of all time. Over the course of 2 years, he would claim to have killed at least 5 people, and his letters to the San Francisco Chronicle would become a hallmark of his crimes. We'll explore the backstory of this enigmatic killer, and examine the evidence that has left experts and investigators scratching their heads. I'd like to introduce you to the enigmatic figure at the center of one of the greatest unsolved serial killer cases in American history, Arthur Lee Allen. He was 35 years old at the time of the Zodiac Killer's rampage, living in Vallejo, California, a city located near the San Francisco Bay Area. Arthur Lee Allen, a mild-mannered man with a somewhat unassuming demeanor, went about his daily routine, working as a school janitor. He lived with his wife, Betty, and his 2 sons in a cozy little house in the suburbs. He was a well-liked member of his community, who, on the surface, seemed like the epitome of ordinary suburban life. But beneath the facade of normalcy, little did anyone know that Arthur Lee Allen led a secret life, one that would soon take a dark and sinister turn. His job as a school janitor gave him access to the school's grounds and facilities, where he spent his days sweeping floors and emptying trash cans. In the evenings, he would return home to his family, where he was a devoted father and husband. His relationships with his family and neighbors were characterized as friendly and cordial, and they had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. As he went about his daily routine, there was no outward indication of the chaos that would soon erupt. Despite his seemingly ordinary life, Arthur Lee Allen had a certain charisma about him that made him likable and relatable. He had a quick wit and a charming smile, which he used to deflect suspicion and avoid drawing attention to himself. He was a bit of a loner, but he had a few close friends and acquaintances who appreciated his dry sense of humor and his easygoing nature. Some people even found themselves drawn to his mysterious and enigmatic persona, as if there was more to him than met the eye. But was this likability a carefully constructed facade, designed to hide his true nature? At the time, Arthur Lee Allen was a member of a local chess club, where he met some of his closest friends and confidants. He also attended a local theater group, where he was a member of the chorus. It was through these social connections that he began to build relationships with people who would eventually be instrumental in his life. So, who did he trust, and how far did these relationships reach? Arthur Lee Allen's world began to unravel in the months leading up to the Zodiac Killer's first attacks. What triggered this change in him, and did anyone notice the warning signs that something was terribly wrong? The year was 1968 and it's a hot summer evening, July 4th to be exact, in Vallejo, California. The sun has just set over the city, casting a warm orange glow over the streets. A group of teenagers had gathered at a remote spot near Blue Rock Springs Park, a secluded location surrounded by dense woods. The air is calm and peaceful, with a hint of barbecue smoke from the nearby festivities to commemorate the nation's birthday. The only sound comes from the distant hum of a car or two driving by on the main road. The events leading up to this fateful night were a series of innocent gatherings, as teenagers and young adults would often hang out at the park, enjoying the summer weather and each other's company. The park was a popular spot, known for its beauty and seclusion. On this particular evening, a group of friends had arrived at the park around 9 p.m., intending to spend the night. They had brought food, beer, and music, and were settled in for a night of relaxation. Little did they know, their evening was about to take a dark and sinister turn. As the night wore on, the group began to disperse, with some heading off to explore the woods or find a secluded spot to socialize. Around 11 p.m., a lone vehicle was seen leaving the scene, but its occupants were not seen by anyone. A few minutes later, a woman by the name of Betty Lou Jensen, along with her friend David Faraday, were driving back to Vallejo when their Chevrolet Impala was pulled over by a stranger. The killer, later identified as the Zodiac Killer, opened fire on the couple, striking Jensen in the chest and arm, while Faraday was hit multiple times in the head and chest. Jensen died shortly thereafter, while Faraday succumbed to his injuries a short time later. The most shocking detail of this crime is the callousness and brazenness of the killer's actions, as he not only stopped the couple, but also shot them in broad daylight, in a crowded area, and then simply drove away. The fact that he used a .22 caliber handgun, which was commonly used at the time, adds to the sense of randomness and unpredictability of the crime. The killer's ability to remain calm and composed while committing such atrocities only adds to the sense of fear and unease that comes with this case. The Zodiac Killer's modus operandi of using a gun, and then taunting the police with cryptic letters, has left investigators and experts baffled to this very day. The first person to discover what happened was a group of teenagers, who were in the area when they heard the shots. They immediately called the police and rushed to the scene, where they found Jensen dying, while Faraday was already dead. The police were called and they arrived on the scene shortly after, where they began to investigate the crime. The investigation would go on to become one of the most high-profile in the history of the Vallejo Police Department. The case would ultimately lead to a massive manhunt, but the killer would remain at large, sending cryptic letters to the police and media, claiming responsibility for the crime. Comment below, what do you think really happened here? Did the Zodiac Killer act alone, or was he part of a larger organization? Was the crime a random act of violence, or was it a deliberate attempt to send a message? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. As the full scale of what occurred becomes clear, it's evident that this was no ordinary crime. The Zodiac Killer's motives were complex and multifaceted, and his methods were brutal and calculating. The crime has left a lasting impact on the Vallejo community, and its legacy continues to be felt to this day. With each new piece of evidence, the investigation continues to unravel, revealing more details about the killer's identity and modus operandi. But for now, the case remains shrouded in mystery, leaving us with more questions than answers. And now, as we leave this pivotal moment in the case, we find ourselves at a crossroads, where the truth is waiting to be uncovered. The investigation into the Zodiac Killer's identity and crimes is about to take a dark and twisted turn, with new leads and new evidence that will shake everything the police thought they knew. Stay tuned for part 2 of our series, as we delve deeper into the case, and uncover the shocking truth behind the Zodiac Killer's reign of terror. As the Zodiac Killer's modus operandi became more brazen, police first responded by assigning a team of detectives to the case. These detectives scoured the streets of Vallejo, looking for any leads that might crack the case. But they were met with a seemingly insurmountable task, as the killer seemed to always be one step ahead. The police were baffled by the cryptic letters and codes sent by the killer, which seemed to taunt them at every turn. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't seem to catch a break. But all of that changed with the discovery of a crucial piece of evidence, a cryptogram sent by the killer to the San Francisco Chronicle. This cryptogram was unlike any other, as it seemed to hint at the killer's true identity. The police were ecstatic as they worked tirelessly to decipher the code, hoping that it would lead them straight to the killer's doorstep. After months of frustration, the code was finally cracked, revealing a tantalizing hint at the killer's identity. The police were convinced that they were one step closer to catching their culprit. As the investigation continued, several suspects emerged, each with their own theory and set of evidence. There was Richard Gaikowski, a journalist who claimed to have known the killer, Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester who seemed to match the killer's description, and Earl Van Best Jr., a seemingly mild-mannered man who had been investigated in the past. But despite the evidence against them, none of these suspects could be confirmed as the real killer. The police were stumped, and the public was getting restless. In the end, it was impossible to say for certain whether any of these suspects were telling the truth. One of the biggest mistakes investigators made was focusing on the person who claimed to be the Zodiac Killer's brother. This individual seemed convincing, but ultimately, there was no conclusive evidence to back up their claims. In fact, it turned out that the person was a total red herring, a clever imposter who had managed to fool even the most seasoned detectives. The investigation was delayed by months as the police chased down this lead, only to find out that they had been duped. It was a crushing blow to the team, and a stark reminder of how elusive the killer was. The community was growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress in the case. As we close in on the 50th anniversary of the Zodiac Killer's crimes, a shocking revelation has emerged that challenges everything we thought we knew about this notorious serial killer. In a recently released book, a former employee of the San Francisco Police Department claims that the department secretly investigated a suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, but buried the case due to concerns over potential prosecution of a high-ranking police official. This revelation has sparked heated debate among true crime enthusiasts, with many arguing that it proves Allen was indeed the Zodiac Killer. However, others point out that the book's author has a history of sensationalism, and the claims may be exaggerated or even fabricated. The truth behind this bombshell remains unknown, leaving fans of the case to speculate. The employee, who remains anonymous, claims that the police investigation into Allen was extensive and included handwriting analysis, witness statements, and even a polygraph test. Allen was reportedly questioned by police multiple times but was never arrested or charged with the Zodiac Killer's crimes.